Joining us now for Global Business Update is Michael Wilson from London. Good morning, Michael.
Morning. The Reserve Bank of Australia did as expected, continuing its fight against inflation, raising interest rates by 0.25%. The Australian main index rose 1.1%. Stocks in Hong Kong actually led the Asia Pacific region. Concluding the month of October, there has been a 14% loss, hovering around the lowest levels it's been seen since 2009, but it rose more than 4% yesterday. Hang Seng up 3.5%. Hang Seng Tech rather up 3.5%, Shanghai up 1%. Thoughts about China's economy and whether or not it'll rebound, and how will it rebound from what's been happening long term? Apparently, according to analysts, lots of challenges. Mainly around decoupling, weak global economy, and expected reopening of years of strict COVID measures. When will that actually happen? The factors which are affecting the outlook for China and the trend of deglobalization, the friction between the United States and China, as well as the weak global economy. And decoupling sounds fine until actually it means that trade doesn't work, comparative advantage doesn't work, and capital gets stranded. And just on COVID, Shanghai's Disney resort abruptly suspended operations yesterday to comply with COVID-19 prevention measures. All visitors at the time of the announcement directed to stay in the park until they return a negative test for the virus. Now, the Black Sea deal suspension, Russia's continuing, will they, won't they? It looks like they've withdrawn from the Black Sea deal, and that will drive up grain and meat prices in Asia Pacific and also lots of African countries as well. The point is, it's not just about wheat providing people with food, but it's about wheat providing foodstuffs for meat to grow, pork, poultry, beef, and all the rest of it, and so these countries, particularly in Asia, are very much dependent upon those grain exports, and they appear to have dried up, given that ships cannot be guaranteed safe passage. To the United States, stock futures are slightly higher. Traders leave behind a winning month. Look ahead to the Fed's interest rate decision on Wednesday. I won't bother you with too much of the figures as far as the futures are concerned, but just to tell you that Uber, Pfizer, Fox, Advanced Micro Devices, and Airbnb all report today in the United States, which will give us further clues about the economy. It looks like the interest rate rise for tomorrow, which will be announced tomorrow, will be 75 basis points, 0.75%. But the big question is then, therefore, what happens afterwards, and will they slow the pace of rising? The markets seem to think that they have. Meanwhile, Joe Biden, the American president, has threatened to pursue higher taxes on oil companies if they don't try to lower gas prices. He's calling it war profiteering. Perhaps closer to the truth is the midterms coming up on November the 8th. And he will actually want pump to be shown to be doubling down on pump prices, because that's a big part of the US economy and also its consumer sentiment. Elon Musk taking over Twitter. He's pulled apparently more than 50 Tesla employees into his takeover. He wants to redesign their subscription and verification systems within 1 week. Thus, people working 24 hours a day, working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. As a result of that, he's got a lot of autopilot engineers over from Tesla. He's saying he's pursuing a very, very aggressive stance with Twitter employees, saying that if they don't hit the deadlines, then their jobs are at stake. A new EU law could open up messaging and app buying. I'm talking about this today because yesterday we were talking about the EU warning Musk stroke Twitter about flying by our rules and so on. It'll apply to, it's the Digital Markets Act basically, and it's going to be, they're still talking about it, but it could actually hit Google giants like, technology giants like Google and Apple, and both of those could be made to open up their services and platforms to other firms and developers. Now, here in the UK, the Prime Minister and the Chancellor have been having a bilateral meeting yesterday, and apparently all the tax increases have been signed off. We don't know what those are yet, because that won't be revealed until the new date for this budget, which will be November the 17th. But if, for example, things, I mean, they will have been looking at things like freezing tax allowances. Those are called stealth taxes. The result of fiscal drag puts more people into paying basic income tax for the first time, or the higher rate for the first time. The big levers, really, income tax, VAT, and national insurance. Well, national insurance, I don't think they're going to reverse that, given that the House actually has voted on that, including the Labour Party as well. They voted on that. VAT could be very tricky, raising that in terms of having a cost of living crisis, VAT being a purchase tax, and income tax, well, we'll see about that. But they're saying that the people with the broadest shoulders should be taxed to look after the rest. So that means that people who earn more than a certain amount probably can look forward to paying higher taxes. The national grid, the energy supplier, electricity supply, to the various electricity companies in the UK, as saying blackouts would be a last resort. Their base case, as they put it, is that there is enough power to last through the winter, but they're not making any promises about it. I think they're preparing us for bad news. And just back to those wheat prices, they've jumped by nearly 6% after Russia withdrew from that Ukrainian export deal, or appears to have withdrawn from it. And oil has eased very, very slightly, given there's nothing dramatically changing going on. OPEC may reduce production to keep the oil price up, but of course there is the global slowdown, which is actually affecting oil consumption throughout the world, and that's keeping oil prices down. That's the global view.
All right, Michael, I asked this question last week. I think I'm going to ask it again. What are we dealing with here? Yes, it's good to raise taxes, but is the black hole 50 billion pounds, or there might need to be more tax rises? Because I still want to inquire about this black hole of 50 billion pounds. I personally think the figure is more, and we've not reined in the figure with the BOE, the ones that were used to buy back bonds, and the ones that were used to stabilize the market. Because some money was put in there, and there's no clarity as regards it. And that's why it probably would have been a good deal if we had seen the OBR report before most of these tax rises will kick in. That's number one. Number two will be about the heavy clamp by the EU on tech companies. We all remember the work of Madam Vestager. Wouldn't this stifle that level of creativity and that level of import of funds through taxes that some economies in the EU, like Ireland, benefit from? Because we saw what happened with the French trying to raise up taxes against tech companies and the likes.
I think that the EU is trying to do it. It's made very big noises about it. It had the digital the proposals. I mean, we would call it a bill, wouldn't we, until it's actually passed? But it's had a lot of digital media proposals which are running, and also, as I say, it's warned Twitter rather, that it has to fly by EU rules. I mean, what they're seeing is a huge opportunity, for tax, which no organisation fails to do. I mean, yes, you're absolutely right. Of course, there will be people who will say to that, well, this actually stifles productivity and entrepreneurialism. Well, I mean, it depends if you believe in the Laffer curve or not, doesn't it? Really, you know what I'm talking about. I've heard people say are in favour of that, and people who are not in favour of that. It's a similar kind of argument for windfall taxes. If you tax big companies, will they move away? I suspect they won't, because there's a big audience for social media in the EU, and they will just have to deal with it. I wouldn't want to be heading up Facebook right now, and I wouldn't want to be heading up Twitter right now, but they will have to come to terms with the fact that they've grown so big that they are going to become a target wherever they are in the world, and it won't just be the EU. I suspect that's probably what I'd be arguing about that. As far as the black hole's concerned, look, I mean, who knows how big it is? And even if it's defined as 45 billion or 50 billion or 60 billion or even 75 billion in the budget coming up, I've heard all those figures over the past days. What none of these figures actually do, and the OBR sounds a great idea. But the fact of the matter is there are about 40 organisations. They're not necessarily official, but 40 organisations from whom we get differing views about the economy, because nobody can actually calculate, and this is a really important point. You can say from day now until your time, 9 o'clock this morning, in about an hour's time, or half an hour's time, that this will be the case. But it doesn't take into account, none of this forecasting takes into account the dynamic rises or falls of tax, of fiscal drag, and all those other factors which actually rely on those figures. I'm not denying there isn't a problem. Of course, there's a huge black hole to fill, and it will be incredibly unpopular, because it will mean, as I have detailed this morning, I don't see any other aspect apart from keep freezing tax allowances so that the majority of the money that's needed comes from income tax over the next 3 or 4 years. That's the way I see it going. I don't see how they can't raise VAT. I mean, that'd be political suicide to do that in a cost of living crisis. And the national insurance reversal has already been agreed on both sides of the House of Commons. So that wouldn't be risked again. All I can see is the taxes on the taxed middles rising quickly. How big the hole is, don't know. I don't even think we'll get an answer. I don't think the OBR truthfully knows how big that is. Nice idea, but there's lots of them about, lots of analysts around.
Okay, first, the grain deal that Russia threatened to pull out from. Well, that deal, brokered by the United Nations, was supposed to come to an end on November 19 anyway, although there were talks to further extend it. But the cost of wheat and corn, has gone up. The Chicago Board of Trade says wheat futures gone up by about 5.5%, and then corn prices have also gone up by about 2.8%. Although about 400 vessels still passed through the Black Sea yesterday, the fear, as you have expressed it, is that poor countries of the world will be worst hit. But some members of the international community have been saying, well, if Russia pulls out permanently and does not join us, even when the extension is announced, that we can do it alone. Is that really showboating, or eventually you think Russia may well change its mind? Because the situation with gas in Europe, Europe was able to deal with it, at least for now, without a Russian supply of up to 40%, now down to about 9%. But what do we think is likely to happen with these commodities prices going up with regard to wheat and corn? And then secondly, Elon Musk. I see a contradiction here. Elon Musk says, he's a promoter of democracy, he's an absolute free speech exponent, he's offering us an app X that can deal with anything and everything. And yet, he's a dictator in terms of how he has taken over complete control of Twitter. He has sacked the entire board. He has filed papers with SEC indicating that he is the sole director of Twitter. The CFO is gone, the CEO is gone, the top lawyer in the company is gone. But there is the unresolved issue of the investment by the Saudi Arabians, the Kingdom Holding Company, that is the second largest investor. Politicians in the US are beginning to raise an eyebrow against that. How do you think that is likely to play out? Because here, this is Saudi Arabian investment. Are we going to have a leave situation, that is a Gulf, situation in this particular transaction?
If Elon Musk is all for free speech, then by definition he can do what he likes, can't he? That's all I got to say about that. I mean, who knows which way it's going to go? Who knows how it's going to become a business? Who knows where it will go when it's private? And will it face lots of regulation? Yes, it will. But he's saying free speech. He's saying, well, if you have free speech and you control it and you're very powerful and it's all about money, you can do what you like. And that's what he's doing. And I feel as though the SEC is very late in actually fingering his collar about running his companies and running the takeover battle with Twitter on Twitter. Well, how does that work? Would you like to get your view of the world from Twitter? I suspect not, but you may. But that's free speech, and that's what you get. And the employees are finding out that actually he's quite strict. As I said, he's making them in there 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, and if they don't achieve what he wants within a week, they're going to be out. That's free speech, isn't it? That's actually. If you want to be free, you got freedom. You got freedom to do what you like. Freedom comes with responsibility. I find no contradiction whatsoever with that. I'm not saying I like it. I'm saying I don't see any contradiction with it. As far as Russia's concerned, I think that most people agree that globalization is probably here to stay. We are dependent upon other economies. We're going to learn what it's like not importing deflation, as we have done from places like China, and keeping goods cheap. Maybe we'll have to pay a bit more. But as far as the wheat is separate, I think, because I don't see other sources of that straight away. And as I understand it, at the various Ukraine ports on the Black Sea and terminals inland, warehouses are bursting with grain to export, and Russia's not allowing that to happen. What does that do to Russia's standing on the world stage? I don't need to tell you that, do I? I mean, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? I mean, as far as gas is concerned, fine. As far as oil's concerned, sort of. But it's not this winter that people are worried about. It's next winter. And who knows what things are going to be like in 18 months' time. So I feel as though Russia's isolation is continuing, whether it'll be able to achieve that. Not because of a cost to the economy, but because of being able not to. It doesn't want to be a hermit kingdom like North Korea is. We occasionally hear from North Korea, and then we hear nothing at all. We have no idea what goes on in North Korea. Right. If Russia's heading towards that, then fine.
Okay. Thank you so much, Michael, for your time. All right.